I think that in many ways, people are beginning to understand some basic indigenous concepts. Indigeneity is an idea that can guide you in life. That's not about being Indian, but it's about values. So, for example, relationality. Tribes, commonly intertribal and globally, believe that we are all in relationship to one another. We are in relationship to the natural world. Look at the example of COVID. Masses of people, millions, have begun to realize that their health is as important as the health of a healthcare worker or a transit worker or a supermarket worker, that we are all in relationship and that what we do has an impact on one another.
In all those liberation movements that I worked with, poetry was everywhere. I don't think that's accidental. I think often poetry incorporates our best values. And so reciting these poems to each other, writing poetry for each other is a way of perpetuating and continuing, extending those values. And that loving one another is an important component of our capacity to continue going. We aren't going to get monetary awards. You aren't going to be a Jay-Z with lots of money from being an activist. But what you will get is the undying alliance, allegiance, and respect of people and of long generations of people, you know? And I think that's what we have to aim for, is much more ways of gathering that love force and allegiance love that is important to sustain our ability to do the long distance work and keep our heads high and our shoulders strong to sustain ourselves.
Two things that I learned, over my 40 years of being in this activity. One is that in the beginning, I thought that I was doing this for people. But that's bullshit. I did it all the time because of me, because, as my community and the group in society that I identify with goes up, I go up with them. The second one is that organizing, if you're really serious, if you're really committed to be an organizer, organizing is a lifetime activity. That's the only way. When you integrate, organizing into your daily life, then you don't get burnout, right? Then you find ways to, deal with situations that you have. If you're married, my wife was also an organizer. And, we have two kids together. And so, we had to deal with that reality of our lives, right? Organizing is not something that you do and then you go home and, I come back to it the next day. Organizing is something that, is with you 24 hours, 7 days a week. And when you, accept that that's, really what you want to do, then, you start seeing things with a different perspective. If you are really committed to organizing, that if you're really committed to making changes to your life and to the communities that you live on, then you need to, be serious and accept that this is something that, um, at least for the next 5 or 10 years of your life, this is what's, what you're going to do. And this part of your life is not separate.
I think just take care of yourself. I would say like pour into yourself. Think about what you're passionate about, what you love, and bring that into your organizing, or let that be your organizing, definitely heal, think about just the impacts of white supremacy on us are so profound and so harmful. So I think that we have to heal from that, and healing looks different for different people. So it's just like investigating the different modalities of healing and figuring out what works for you and prioritizing that, because that is a part of the work. We cannot like get to this liberated place and we're still, embodying white supremacy ourselves. So we have to really heal from that, and we have to center that in everything that we do, and especially in the work that we do. And it's like, that looks like setting aside time, to pour into yourself. That looks like, working in your gifts, whatever your gifts are, like bringing those to movement. How can those get us closer to liberation? And it's in learning to say no, and just really doing so unapologetically.
Spade work. This is something, one, I love that title, and I love it because part of the way the broader culture de-weaponizes the history of struggle is to Hollywoodize the history of struggle, right? To make it into this series of dramatic stories about these incredible charismatic personalities, all of whom were eloquent, right? And change comes very, very rapidly, right? And to take away the part of, I always think of these organizers in Laurel, Mississippi, going back to the same house every week for the summer with the same question: are you willing to go down to vote? And at the end, in some cases, because you've now built a relationship, the people who said no in June, some of them are going to say yes in August, right? But nobody sees that process from June to August. The relationship building, right? The organization building, the skill building, the confidence building. All that takes months or years, right? I mean, Montgomery happened, the bus boycott happened from between Friday, and the community was organized by Sunday. But the people who organized it had 20, 30, 40 years of organizing experience, right? So they could do something over a weekend because they could leverage all of those relationships. Yes. So anyway, we remember the bus boycott. We don't remember that E.D. Nixon was organizing cucumber workers in that state in the 1930s, right? And therefore, he has a certain kind of capital. And so that's the spade work. And Ella Baker, who was just death on the so-called charismatic, often church-based leaders who wouldn't do any work, but they would show up when a microphone showed up to talk about what we need to do, right? But after the microphone was gone, they were gone. And so it's the undramatic, unrewarding, tedious parts of the work that very few folk are willing to do. And often these are parts of the work that involve developing other people, right? Because that takes forever and there's no immediate gratification to it. But you could argue that without that, the long-term payoffs aren't long-term. They will not last if you're not building the base, which is the other part of spade work.